Oh, happy day. This is Forever in a Day with C and
K. Yeah.
We're back with the part 2. Hopefully a shorter version, but the last version was definitely worthwhile. If you haven't heard the loving your partner with boundaries, please go check that out so you can understand part 2. Part 2 is a continuation of part 1, where we laid out the foundations of what that may look like in setting the table for a relationship that can work long term. Now, in action today, we'll talk about communication, in our case over some form of cards. And I think using our own relationship and see where we are as far as communication is concerned probably will help some people, but maybe you've been there, maybe you're on your way there. But where do we begin with that? I guess I would want to know from you, Kay. Let's go on one thing that is important when you want to communicate how you feel or what's important to you in a relationship.
For me, I feel like it's just me being heard and understood. Because you can hear someone but not really understand what they're saying and where they're coming from. So for me in communication, it is me knowing that you hear me and showing that you understand me.
Okay.
What about you?
I would say it is being heard, but not just because I have an idea. Because I also take so much time in thinking of something. I would want to know that you understand what I'm saying. So it's not just being heard, but being comprehended is important to me. When I communicate with just about anybody.
We just said the same thing.
I don't think it's the same thing.
Kind of.
And there we go. Would be being able to communicate those differences. Being heard.
It's a finite. It's a small difference, but
I feel like it's a difference. It's a fundamental difference, and you can hear what someone says, but comprehending it is knowing why someone said it. Being heard is,
and that's what I just said. The understanding, showing me that you understand.
Well, I think the difference would be in expression. Your expression of what you heard is a matter of how you feel. In comprehension, no matter how you feel, I want to make sure my message come across in a way that I feel heard. And that may sound like on the surface that I want to be heard for what I'm saying. No, it's like, okay, you could be angry, but understand that everything I communicate to you is not. So it's intention-based difference in being heard and comprehended. The words may sound the same, but I can hear you say, I like this very much color red. But that doesn't mean that implies what I may take from that. And comprehension is me explaining what I mean, so it doesn't define.
So it's being heard, understood, and then showing that you comprehend what I'm saying.
Well, would it be a step-by-step process?
I mean, in communication and understanding what your partner may need, I think so.
And I think it's interesting that we can even have that conversation right here and there. So I guess in that case, it would be, instead of, it would be Uno. We're playing Uno, y'all, as well. Would be a difference. I would go with blue. Oh man. I guess it would be a difference in a step-by-step basis of expressing yourself, being heard, and also knowing that it's safe. I think that's what goes under, like, kind of like erased and everything. Somebody could be emotional in that moment. That doesn't mean that someone means ill intentions. Like, your intentions get caught up in the heat of the moment sometimes. And I would say at some point in our relationship, it was hard to communicate those intents, especially from triggers you may have had or I may have had. When it comes to talking about civil things. But if it triggers you in one way, it may disrupt you in another. And I may come off as harsh in my tone, but I've learned with you that just because you have a truth doesn't mean you have to communicate in a hurtful way.
Yeah.
And that will be the difference between being heard and comprehended. No, hearing you is knowing that you're not listening to respond. You're not listening to attack. You're listening.
I still think we're saying kind of a very similar thing.
And I think that would be cool in a difference of what
it's just the way that we express it. But I feel like we're saying the same thing. It's just again, the way in which we say it.
And nothing else, that'll be the difference.
And that's the way we communicate. He's a little more detailed in his communication, and I am really like straight to the point with my communication. He needs a little more detail, and I don't. And so we've had to really learn each other in that. And I think, we're still learning that and respecting the differences in that. But, yeah, that's where we're at with it.
I legit respect that. That's how this started. Could be the same thing to someone else, but specifically because it is expressed different, makes it different. And that time for someone to speak is important to me. Whereas, as you say, being heard is important to you. And it means the same thing. I
said, you hear me, and then you show me that you understand what I'm saying. So I want to know that through you hearing me, because you can listen to me, but I need to know that you really comprehend what I'm saying. You're understanding what I'm saying by showing me that you understand.
How would someone show you in this moment?
So if I say,
how would that work?
I need for you to have more gentle words with me.
Mm-hmm.
And so the next time we have a conversation and we're expressing differences in opinion, instead of being like, no, I need for you to hear me, you understand, in a forceful way, it's, Kendra, right now, I am trying to let you know, and I'm trying to express to you what I'm feeling. And it's more of the approach for me than it is the words. Because I understand and I can ingest the words. But if the approach is combative, then I become combative too. So if I express that this is how I am able to really comprehend what you're saying by you delivering to me in a more calm manner, then I am able to give you exactly what you need to. If that makes any sense.
No, it makes sense. You just give me more questions to ask just for the sake of conversation and just for the sake of us living in truth. Where does the triggers come into that exchange if you can't listen to somebody that may be triggered themselves? What if you are the trigger? Or something
so then you have
to
just
trigger?
I think that's in knowing your partner too, and knowing when they're triggered and knowing when to approach and when not to. Because just because a person may want to have a conversation, if you know that they're already dealing with something or triggered by something that has nothing to do with you, then it's probably not the best time to have that conversation. Because then you both are going to be arguing for something that has nothing to do with the individual, but the other person is dealing with something. So then it becomes, what's wrong?
Well, what if in the case that you may be triggered because of a tone of voice I may use, you may need space. I think another step in that is taking space, and that was the most difficult part of my form of communication with anyone.
You need to figure it out.
I'm about getting the issue addressed right then and there, not trying to hold it off. Like, I don't know what that form of simplicity looks like.
But what we've learned, you want to tell them
no, go ahead.
What we're doing right now?
This conversation is fluid. And
so what we've learned, we have started couples therapy. And then what we've learned is that it's okay to actually take space. And not... I was like, what? And not be so forceful in wanting conversation.
And that specifically was addressed from my insecurity and trauma of really not being reassured. And in that, you're not really sure who's in your life or who's not in your life. You know. And you speak from a place of knowing yourself. Good job. But at the same time, you really lose yourself in not knowing yourself, if that makes sense. And you end up having a conversation in front of yourself with someone else. So in the same way that
Because you're healing out loud.
You are healing out loud, and then that's the conversation base, really. And a lot of people operate from that. So if you have this table, we're set up, you have your parameters, what we just discussed.
But not using your healing as an excuse in your relationship with self or with other people.
That could become an issue, especially if you're working to improve, feeling good, because at times you will feel like you need space to be able to just communicate and say how you feel.
Right.
And sometimes that doesn't require someone to give their opinions and thoughts and concerns. It's just being there for someone. That's a big part of communication, is being there for someone.
And just listening. And allowing the person to take space when needed. And not feel less than because they need space. It doesn't mean that they need space from you, per se. But they need time to process. Because processing, for me, I'm a processor. And so I need time to gather my thoughts before communicating how I feel, just so that I am clear on what I feel. Because I'm working through traumas of my own. And so making sure with myself that I'm not responding from a sense of hurt, but a sense of understanding and seeing and acknowledging that my partner isn't the reason why I'm triggered right now.
Yeah, and like I said, taking that space and leaving the dinner table, so we said in episode 1, is difficult, because that's the reason why I explained myself to be heard. And even in the first part of the conversation, when we broke down our differences and what that means to us, really, it comes back to the same thing, because communication is for the unity of that relationship, or just having general interest for that person. And just considering yourself when you talk to that person. I think that's key into just going forward in any relationship. And I think for me, couples therapy is fine, or whatever the case may be, but just practicing what you learn along the way of what you truly want. And for me, it was just about being comprehended, or as my wife partner would say, being heard. Never really being heard and feeling safe and being heard allows for everything to feel so much better. And I think a lot of us fail to neglect that moment of, that's all you really want. You just want someone to make you feel safe in how you feel. And that's possible, but you cannot take away from somebody else to do that.
Right.
That's why communication exists.
Right. I agree. I wholeheartedly agree with that. And then it makes for a better relationship with yourself and with whomever you decide to be in relationship with.
I would agree as well. It just takes that humbleness of erasing everything you've known or you've been through to move forward and cooperate with someone else. Like, you go through life and you feel like you have to hold on to all these different things to make you you. Of course not. Because you can't make something new in a relationship or whatever the case may be if you truly don't let some things go.
Right.
And add different seasonings to your repertoire, if you will.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's essentially it.
Like, it's so crazy when you think, excuse me, when you think about, like, when you watch stuff and you see people in therapy and it's like I hear you say this and I acknowledge how you feel and all of that. That's a real space to be in when you are learning how to communicate with someone and giving them the space that they need and showing them that you understand and you hear them. It makes a big difference. Now, you don't necessarily have to use those words, that wording, but it helps for sure. And I feel like when you really take the time to really sit and be in that therapy space, you actually cut time from sitting in therapy, if that makes any sense. Like, when you're really working it, you don't have to be in there for long periods of time because you set the intention and you know what that is and what you want from it.
And before we go, just want you to know you can follow us all on Forever and a Day and CK on Instagram, YouTube, all of the social media platforms. But you just heard therapy in real life. What you just heard was a legit exchange, something that probably would be off camera or off pod or whatever you want to call this. So literally everything. So if you feel like what you understand the raw exchange between two powerful people that are making a powerful union. Yes. And allowing it to be available to you for the sake of you feeling like you may not feel ready or comfortable enough to go throughout this journey. You have several different types of episodes where you see us be fearless by just being ourselves. So just be yourself. Yeah. And you'll find someone else along the way that can continue to empower you, even if you're saying the same thing. And I admit on record, I just said the same thing that she said. It wasn't the way that I wanted to say it, so I said it like that. But you don't gotta be rude about that. Right. Because it's how you feel. And I feel the world of this young lady sitting across from me, as we are even in Uno, I might say. But we go at it pretty competitive with that as well. She's a beast.
Oh man, I just appreciate you all for listening to us and joining us again for another episode of Forever and a Day with C&K. Yes, and we will be bringing you another one. What is it? Next Sunday. So thank you for tuning in and sending you love on your journey of being a single person, or if you're a couple listening to this, no matter where you are, sending you love.